Welcome to Fan4Racing Radio. I am Fan4Racing Sharon, and joining me tonight is Chris Crichton. Jay is on vacation, so it's just going to be the two of us, Chris. We're going to go head to head.
Yeah, hand-to-hand combat is the name of the game tonight. So,
well,
round one, ready, fight.
Hold on, let me brace myself. Okay, so I do have in the private chat all of our hot topics here for tonight. Have you ever had a chance to look that over and know where you want to start?
Yeah, it's kind of Mexico City leaning, so we'll try to find the best topic for.
I'll tell you what. Let's start with the overall thoughts on the racing in Mexico City. Let's start with the Xfinity Series and then the NASCAR Cup Series.
That's great. That sounds great. So Xfinity Series, I think I have a lot different opinion than the Cup Series, and I don't want to start this off as controversial, but I feel like we've already dabbed many years into going to these road courses in non traditional areas such as Portland, such as Canadian, the Montreal race. There's one of my favorites that's up in Ohio, Mid Ohio. And so Mexico City felt like a good place to race Xfinity, and the response there was, unbelievable. Of course, Daniel Suarez was a lot more competitive in the Xfinity Series race than he was in the Cup race, and so that kind of added a little bit to the hometown crowd, the cheers, the hollers. I've told you about my experience at being at Talladega. There's been nothing like, Dale Earnhardt taking the lead at Talladega. It creates a fan stir that is just unimaginable. And you don't know it until you're there, right? And Chase Elliott kind of has that as well. Well, that was a hometown kid, Daniel Suarez. I felt Xfinity really set the standard of what the weekend was going to be. Those cars are a little bit more raceable, I think, with these types of tracks. There's a little bit more competitive lean towards what the Xfinity Series, the product that they put onto the table these days. Then you go into Sunday, and it's kind of like the old stumper dump. It's a good race. Shane Van Gisbergen is the modern day Ricky Rudd. He's doing things in a race car nobody else can do at a road course, and it showed that by being by winning by 16 seconds. I've seen a stat that said it was not since Kurt Busch, and I can't remember. I wish I remembered the whole stat that this is actually. Down. Did you write it down? That's great. So to stay on the Xfinity Series side, I think it was really exciting. It was a good place to go for the fans. I believe that we probably did earn some fans that are typically more on the F1 side. So we kind of introduced them to our style of racing. And look, there's something completely amazing about watching a stock car cut through a road course, right? It's just, especially a road course as tight cornered as a Mexico City. You get to Sonoma or something, it's really, it's kind of, I guess we've watched that race for almost 30 years plus. Maybe it's not all that great. Watkins Glen, top notch. Love a Watkins Glen race. They really know how to race there. Another tight cornered racetrack where you really have to race the course and not lean out and run through different parts of the racetrack that are not actually asphalt. All in all, for the weekend, I mean, anytime you go and experience a new place, I think that adds a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for with that? I think it brings new viewership. I think it adds excitement.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we got the race that I wanted on Sunday on Saturday, and we got what I expected on Sunday. So I'll pass it to you. What do you think?
Okay, with regard to the Xfinity race first, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Daniel Suarez wrecked his car in practice, had to go to a backup. He started dead last and raced his way through that field to finish first. It doesn't get any more exciting than that. And add in the fact that he was the hometown or home track, I should say, home track favorite, because he's from Monterrey, Mexico.
Right.
But he was the home track favorite, and they love him there. And it was very, very evident. I love the podium celebration. I loved when I saw Daniel Suarez get so emotional when those little girls were singing the national anthem for both, the USA national anthem as well as the national anthem for their country. And
during the Cup race.
Oh, that was the Cup race. Yeah, I want to go back to the Xfinity race, but even seeing Daniel, wrap himself in the flag, for the podium finish and everything. It made me want to do podium finishes for all of the races. It probably wouldn't be the same, but it was really fun to watch it there. So All Sports All Day commented, and he says, I think it was cool to see Daniel win Xfinity. Never have really had an opinion on him, but I was rooting for him for this weekend. And I think a lot of people, I think Daniel, All Sports All Day says it right. I think everybody was rooting for Daniel Suarez to win at his home track. And I thought that was fantastic. And to see him win in that Xfinity Series race. I know on Sunday, after the Cup race, I was like, gosh, I'm so glad that Daniel won on Saturday because that was fantastic. The cheers he received, you could just sense the love and admiration that everybody had for Daniel Suarez. It was really fantastic to see that. And it was like a whole country was behind that guy. And it was fun to watch. On Sunday, I thought there was still some really great racing. I was really impressed. I was really, really impressed with Ty Gibbs and the racing that he was doing on Sunday. He's a sophomore or junior in the Cup Series right now, and he's racing right up there with the big guys. And I'm talking about the big guys like Shane Van Gisbergen, who we know is very, very good on the road courses. And he was mixing it up. And I saw a lot of really great racing throughout the field, guys who had to race their way up, guys who couldn't quite get through the traffic to get to the front. And All Sports All Day says, I think I did this one already. Ty Gibbs and Riley Earps both had great moments. And yeah, that's a good point, All Sports All Day. I do think that Riley Earps, of all people, he really struggles racing here at home. But boy, you put him on that track in Mexico City, and he was right up there. It wasn't his day overall. But you're right. He had a really good run. Cole Custer in the Cup Series had a really good run. So we got a chance to see some of the guys that we don't normally see running up front. And I thought that was fantastic. I enjoyed watching those guys have the runs that they had. And I don't think that they're not talented just because they haven't quite figured out this Gen 7 car yet. It's a tough learning curve, but to see them come to a track like Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, I thought that they did a really fantastic job. There were some very tight turns, and those guys figured it out, and they were up there running up front. I enjoyed it. I thought the racing was fantastic, actually, on both days, and I enjoyed both races. It's not always fun when you have a driver who wins by 16.567 seconds over the second place finisher. But if you look at the racing, and I think Prime Video did such a great job with showing the racing throughout the track, not just the leaders, but they showed us where the racing was happening and where the passing was happening. And they were giving us insights as to why they were struggling or why certain things were happening. And I really enjoy the broadcast on Prime Video.
Yeah, I enjoyed the broadcast on both CW and Prime Video.
Yes, both
Um,
of them.
I was trying to look back. I think we had several drivers that finished in the top 10 that were not necessarily guys that we would expect to be up front in most Cup races. But this is the time of season where we typically get these guys. And when you look at the end of the year where they have 3 or 4 top 5 finishes or, top 10 finish, the Cole Custers do stand out. Of course, John Hunter Nemechek, Cole Custer, like we knew these guys were good at road courses. We've seen them win in the lower series at road courses.
Yep,
Michael
yep,
McDowell, a phenomenal road course racer. As a matter of fact,
yes.
I don't think Michael McDowell has he ever won a road course?
I can't
I don't
think
think
of
so, but
them.
he's always been a top 5, top 10 finisher. So those are those are your kind of your usual suspects that will pop up. Of course, when you have a flawless day like Cole Custer did, or John Hunter Nemechek, even Eric Jones for a period there, you'll see those guys. Catherine Legg was probably one that I bring with the most noticed of the weekend because we didn't mention her name very much. Normally that's a good sign. It's unfortunate that a driver that brings in a female sponsorship and is really cutting her teeth and committed to the type of schedule that she was committed to, because it's been like a 5-week run where she's run a race every weekend at some tracks where Xfinity. I believe this was the track where she raced at on the Cup side, bringing her back to the Cup Series. You know, when you have diversity in a sport,
Yes,
it's great to have a little bit of knowledge of the driver, and I think that we as media and also in broadcasting, we forget how important it is to share those small wins that somebody from that type of team. Look, that's a 70, that's the same team that had a charter that sold it for $40 million and just decided to show up now and race select races. So Catherine's bringing a lot of money to the table in order to have that ride and to not be the butt of all jokes this week as she was in Phoenix really shows the leaps and bounds that she's already made, which
yes,
is the fact that she's a committed race car driver. This is not
yes,
just somebody that decided, like a Cletus McFarland, to just jump in a race car and become a name, right? She's a committed race car driver. And so, with that, on the Cup Series side, I really felt like we kind of missed one there by not giving her the props that she deserved. I did write down the right guy won both races.
yeah. That's probably true. The right guy won both races. All Sports All Day also commented. They said even in the final 40, there were some great battles throughout the field. You're right. Prime did a great job covering that too, and I did enjoy that part of it. I like seeing the racing all over the track. But you bring up a good point too, Catherine Legg, and the diversity that NASCAR is striving for in this sport is something that we really need to celebrate because I think, especially for a female driver, it is not easy coming into a sport that is male dominated. And it is not easy driving a Gen 7 car. Uh, some of the more experienced drivers, I think about Kyle Busch, who we've always thought about as being one of the best drivers in NASCAR, is struggling with this next gen car. So if a woman comes into the sport and she struggles with it a little bit and that learning curve, I don't think we should belittle her for that. It
Right.
is a challenge and a learning curve that is involved, and everybody's on their own learning curve. I remember when we were wondering whether William Byron was going to make it in the Cup Series. It seemed like his learning curve was taking a while, and we didn't know when that first win was going to come. But he has come a long way, and look at where William Byron is now. He's at the top of the series point standings. So I think we just need patience when we have new people come into the sport. We need to allow them that learning curve and to do well. But I kind of diverted myself away from our topic at hand, which is the racing in Mexico City. I did see a clip by Ben Kennedy today, and he said they are looking at the possibility of making Mexico City a regular on the schedule. Now, whether that means the cycle of 3 years and then we move to a different location, or if that means a regular on the schedule every year, I'm not sure exactly what that means. But I like that they are saying that they want to make this a regular on the schedule. I thought it was an interesting road course. I loved that stadium. That stadium was fantastic. The stadium seating that they had at the finish line, where they could do the podium celebration and the burnout, and I thought Shane Van Gisbergen kicking his rugby football up into the stands was fantastic. And I just I loved that stadium, and I would love to see us go back there and see like other drivers go through that learning curve and get better at the track. It's a really it is an expert track, and I did notice how smooth Shane Van Gisbergen was going through those curves over every other car driver out there. He was just so much smoother than everybody else. And that was interesting to watch as well. So one last go around, Chris, and we'll move on to our next topic.
Yeah, for sure. Let's hit Prime real quick. Prime went 10 minutes without showing the leader. They realized that a 16-second lead by Shane Van Gisbergen was not going to be selling viewerships. So they decided to find the races that were within the field, and they were able to catch quite a bit of action that was going on. And so
Yes.
that's something that we've asked for. I say demanded from other sports coverages. And look, all it takes is one. All it takes is one of these networks to commit to something like that, and the rest will fall in. People were up in the air about how long it would take to get these dye colors out of food, and all it takes is the consumer. The consumer's going to quit
Yes.
buying it if it's not. We say, oh, that's got red dye in it. We don't want that product anymore. We're going to buy this product instead. That's how quickly manufacturers decide to change because they want to stay there. And that's exactly what's going to happen right here with what Prime has done in the broadcast that they've developed and brought and set before us. I just props to Prime for
Yes.
giving that 10-minute. We knew Shane was running away with the race. We didn't need to see that car. There was also others to talk about. Something else that I had in making Mexico a regular race. Those comments, I I I don't mind the road courses, but let's drop Coda, or let's drop let's drop the Roval. Right? We've got enough road courses. I listened to Richard Petty earlier today, who was on a rant about. I shared it with you. Who
I
was
did.
on a
I
rant
watched it.
about Shane Van Gisbergen able to make the playoffs, but he also put in there that it's a road course race, and does NASCAR really belong at road courses? And I know in his day they were short tracks, they were dirt tracks, and he said that we didn't belong going back to dirt tracks. We had stepped above that. So I'm kind of still trying to figure out who Richard Petty is and what he thinks is the perfect NASCAR track. I believe he would say North Wilkesboro probably. So any track that's like that, we're good. Anything outside of that, I'm not sure. We'll have to ask Richard Petty if that's a good race or not. But I think that with the way that our drivers had to stay to themselves, they weren't able to bring their comfort to Mexico City. I think all those things are really important for our drivers. It's not so much important for you and I. It doesn't give us much to talk about when the guy doesn't have his motorhome there. There's really no emphasis on how the race is. But what I want is our drivers to be comfortable, and I want them to be able to enjoy wherever we go and race, because that's part of the experience. I have heard so many times since we got back from Talladega about how they met Dale Jr. and Josh Berry at the truck stop, at the Pilot truck stop. Like that's been the ultimate talk about, not the
Yes.
race or anything else like that. Like, I got to meet Dale Jr. and Josh Berry
Yes.
buying beer at the Pilot. So when you're not giving the drivers the ability to go out and experience the settings, then we're there like a thief in the night, right? And so I think that that's all challenging things that we're going to have to look into, and whether or not we want to be there as a full-time scheduled commitment based off of how how our drivers are treated and how they have to basically stay in a hotel room to protect themselves. I don't know how the F1 drivers do it, but NASCAR is more of a, they get out and they go about the community. Brad Keselowski, one of the coolest guys ever, he goes out into the campgrounds and stuff and meets campers and gives them free beer or whatever it is that he has. When he had the Miller Lite sponsorship, that's what he did. I'm not sure how he does now, but all those things are important. It's fan engagement,
Yes.
and that's what NASCAR is really all about. So if we're having to cut that out, I want relationships with Mexico to be better, so that our guys can continue to exert themselves in the community as they do at other racetracks. And one last topic that we hit on just a few minutes ago that you said about Gibbs. Gibbs is knocking on the door. And
Yes,
you
he
take
is.
what happened last week in Michigan, where they said, look, you can't drive the car like you want to because we're conserving gas. That's kind of what I got out of that. I know that there's other conspiracy theories, and I agree that sometimes things sound a little fishy, especially through radio communications. But we're not here for that today. What we're here today to talk about is how well Gibbs is doing under pressure, because the pressure is rising. He's in his junior year. He hasn't won a race yet. He's officially the longest tenured driver at Joe Gibbs Racing without a win. Those are all pressure points for him. And instead of him falling behind and getting even worse, he's defiant of that, and he's racing as if he's got a chip on his shoulder. And generally, when you have a racer who can get that in his head, that I am going to prove to the world that I am better than the stats show, we start seeing that driver come along. This is, you said William Byron. William Byron for 3 years in the Cup Series, we're scratching our head like, this kid was crazy dominant in the Truck Series, crazy dominant in the Xfinity Series. Now he gets to the Cup Series and he's a quiet little guy who can't seem to get it all put together. Now he's the silent assassin. And
Yes.
he'll get you. And I think that maybe Ty Gibbs could be rolling in on that third year where things are really going to start clicking. Look, you don't have a superstar overnight if you're not Caitlin Clark. You only have, let me put it like this, each sport only has one Caitlin Clark or Michael Jordan, right? Most of the time, it takes years to develop a superstar. And I'm not sure if Ty can be a superstar, but he's definitely not counted out yet. Michael Waltrip, we knew he was never going to be a superstar. He went way too far without winning a race. Took him a long time to finally get it, but he did get it. But I believe Ty Gibbs may not have to suffer that kind of struggle. I think he's knocking on the door for a win very soon.
Yes, you brought up some really good things. The comments with regard to Richard Petty. Richard Petty probably doesn't like road courses. They didn't race road courses when he was racing. But one thing that I will say is that when they started racing road courses, a lot of the drivers were not that great on the road courses, so they brought in ringers. But the drivers eventually got to be very good on road courses. And now these drivers are coming in with the expectation that you not just good on a short track, not just good on an intermediate track or a super speedway. You've got to add road courses to your resume. And that's what a top tier series should be, is a variety of different tracks and the ability to race on all those different tracks. So we're talking about a different day, a different era. We're in a next gen era, if you will. And so I think the variety is what fans are looking for. And I agree that we probably don't want to, if we're going to add a road course, maybe we got to take away a road course. And maybe there is a 3-year rotation. We've talked about extensively about how much we like the 3-year rotation. So, if they do that, I think fans will be happy with that. And maybe they do 3 years here in Mexico City, and maybe they choose another international track. We loved Montreal. We loved Toronto. We love going international. and racing on road courses international. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I think we're in a different era, and I understand where Richard Petty is coming from. I get it. But and then he made some comments too about SVG being in 33rd place and winning a race and now being a part of the playoffs. Road courses are a part of what this is all about. And when they did the interview with SVG after the race, they asked him about all of this. And he said, Trackhouse brought me in to bring them into the playoffs by winning at road courses. That was the purpose for bringing SVG into that organization. He said, now in the meantime, I get to learn how to be good at the ovals, the intermediates, the short tracks. And so he's on a learning curve too, to develop his skills to be better at some of these other venues. And he is getting better at some of these other venues. So I think that's a great thing. Is he going to be good in the playoffs? Not everybody's going to advance throughout all of those rounds. Only 4 of those drivers are going to make it to Phoenix for the championship round. So that means that the other 12 drivers are going to drop out at some point. And SVG might surprise some people. So we'll see what happens. I love it when we see somebody from down in under the cut line that wins a race and shakes up the point standings. I think that makes it that much more interesting.
Yeah, just one thing to add to what you said about SVG.
I'm not done yet, though, just so you know.
Okay, that's great. I just want to add to that he tonight was racing in a Legends car at Concord Speedway at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So your commitment to ovals is there.
Yes.
Like, yeah, there's no other reason at all for SVG to race in a Legends race at Charlotte Motor Speedway on a Monday night after winning in a Cup Series race in Mexico City last night. Then the fact
and the fans are going to love it.
I mean, he did really good until got into a late race wreck and got put out. But he was in the same series that Keelan Harvick was racing in as well.
Oh, cool.
So they were racing door to door together. So that's his commitment to becoming a better oval racer. Look, we knew Marcus Ambrose could come in and win at road course races, but it was and Juan Pablo as well. But it was the maturity that we watched as they became better oval racers that we really respected their craft, because they did work hard to become oval racers.
Yes, they did. And I think that SVG is making that commitment, and you gave a good example of that. You also talked about drivers being able to experience the surroundings around the tracks that they're going to. I think some of the drivers did. I saw posts on social medias where they were getting out. And I don't know if you've traveled internationally or not, but usually when you travel internationally, they tell you where the safe places for Americans to go are. So that, I know when I went to Cancun, they were like, stay on the strip. Do not leave the strip. It is not safe. So I'm sure that was the same case there, because I did see drivers that were. And there was a post by Carson Hocevar, and I think Taz posted it in our chat, where he said he was really skeptical about going to Mexico City, and after having been there and experienced the fans and experienced the hospitality, he is all in on going back to Mexico City. So I think that's a good thing. And that's part of the experience. That's part of NASCAR going to some of these international places, is to kind of address some of the biases that some of us may have, or things that we don't know about some of these places. And I thought they put on a fantastic show, telling us about the Hermanos Rodriguez, the brothers Rodriguez, and the history of that track. Was fantastic. Listening to those little girls sing the national anthem and everything, I was getting goosebumps, and I know Daniel was too. He was getting emotional over that. And I think we did get a really fantastic experience at Mexico City. And I think
in both races.
In both races. I thought it was fantastic. And I think the drivers enjoyed a lot of that as well. Now, you also made a comment. I wrote down Ty Gibbs and SVG. What was your comment with regard to that? Because I had a response, and now I can't remember the comment.
Just that he was, in both races he was there. He was also part of the the late race to the end at Michigan. So basically, Gibbs is just knocking on the door to become.
Yes. I think that Ty Gibbs did some really good things when he came into the Cup Series. One of the things that we noticed in some of the lower tiers is that he was a little bit overly aggressive. He had some immaturity kind of things that we see a lot of drivers go through. And he's gone through that, and he has matured, I think, as a race car driver and as a human being. And I think he's taking, he's a little bit anxious, I think, right now because, and the announcers talked about this. One of the things that the drivers needed to be careful of is not being desperate to get that win and to put themselves in a bad situation where they hurt themselves more than they help themselves. Well, Ty Gibbs did that. Ty Gibbs is in a desperate situation. He wants to get above that cut line, but he acted in a very mature manner in that race. And I think he did himself a lot of good. Now, I know he was asked to conserve his fuel, and I thought it was interesting. That was it. I thought it was interesting that when SVG's crew told him to kind of slow down a little bit, he didn't have to go after that. He says, "Don't tell me to slow down. Right. You're going to break my rhythm. I don't want to break my rhythm. I'm going to do what I do." And he kind of turned off the radio at that point and didn't want to hear it. And so it was kind of a contrast to when they told Ty Gibbs to conserve his gas and to slow down a little bit. It was a different situation because had he not listened and had he raced real hard, he could have run out of gas and then had a really bad finish. So in that case, I think they both did the right thing. They listened to the crew, and he did the right thing. He conserved his gas. He was there at the end. And SVG did what was right for him. He's a more mature. He knew what he needed to do. He needed to keep in his rhythm. And so he did what he felt was the right thing to do. And there are instances where drivers have to use that gut instinct. And I'm not a fan of slowing down to finish a race either. I want to see drivers go all out. But when you're in a fuel strategy race, and you got to look at the bigger picture, and you got to look at the situation. So I think that was the point that I wanted to make with regard to that. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, so what's our next hot topic?
Let me check it out. Well, come on. Come on. Here's a screenshot. All right, so Stenhouse versus Hocevar.
I had a feeling you were going to go there. Okay, Stenhouse versus Hocevar. Here we are again talking about Carson Hocevar and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. After the race, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. went over to Carson Hocevar, and he told him he's going to kick his butt. And he said,
stateside.
Stateside. He said, "This is 2 out of 3 races that you have done this, and I've had enough." Well, Carson Hocevar said, "I know it was my fault. I didn't mean to do that. It was a stupid mistake on my part." But I don't think that's going to stop Ricky Stenhouse. Carson Hocevar has to stop and think at some point. He can't just race through without putting some thought. Carson Hocevar is going through that learning curve that we talked about of maturity. He is not a mature race car driver yet. Will he be someday? Yes, I truly believe that. I think that he is a talented race car driver, but I don't think he's a mature race car driver. That will come, and hopefully he won't have to take a punch in order to get that point through. But I think Ricky Stenhouse has just had enough, and I can't blame him. One of the reasons that these guys are going head to head is because they are 1 point apart in the series point standings. They are below the cut line, and they both want to make it into those playoffs. This is an example of two drivers being desperate, and exactly the situation and scenario that the commentators were talking about is you don't want to let that desperation show. When you're on the racetrack, you want to keep a level head. You want to keep your head in the game. You want to keep your concentration. And like SVG said, get your rhythm and race your race. So that's what Carson Hocevar has not yet learned. And I think Ricky Stenhouse maybe falls into that category as well, because he's really aggravated with Carson Hocevar. This would be an opportunity for Ricky Stenhouse to reach out to him and say, listen, let me take you under my arm and show you some of the things that I've learned. But I kind of think Ricky Stenhouse maybe hasn't learned some of those things yet either. So it's a lost opportunity from that perspective. But I understand his aggravation. I do understand his aggravation. He's frustrated. I'd like to think that these guys are mature enough that we don't have to punch each other to make the point or kick each other's butt, as he puts it. And I'm being nice about it. But I understand his frustration. I'll just put it that way. But I think he's missing an opportunity to be a mentor to a driver like Carson Hocevar, who's going through the same learning curve that he's going through in some aspects. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, so, I like to think back on my life and how racing has had certain impacts and certain thoughts are connected to real life experiences. And I laughed earlier today when I thought about how Carson knew that he didn't need to hit Ricky anytime soon. And probably as it was about to happen, he was telling himself, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this. Oh, crap, I just did it. It reminds me of getting in trouble at school,
That's a good one.
getting the letter sent home, me promising and swearing up and down that I was going to be on my best behavior when I got to school. And then I show up to school and the next day and I forgot my book bag. Right. Yep. Or I didn't bring the signed note back, or I got I failed a test, and that's kind of the where I feel like of any of the people for Carson to hit, the last person he wanted to hit was Ricky. But it's kind of funny because you look at the direction that Ricky Stenhouse's career went. He was literally sat by Jack Roush in the Xfinity Series, running for a championship because he couldn't keep from wrecking Roush's cars.
Yes.
So is Ricky kind of more like a driving coach for Carson? Because, well, let's be honest here. If Ricky wanted to whoop his tail, right?
Right.
Would he be so candid in his interview? No, not really. No, Ricky understands what's going on, and Ricky's putting pressure. And Ricky probably wants to write a note to his younger self to say, this is what I needed from somebody in the garage.
Yes.
Somebody who was going to grab me and say, dude, you got way too much talent to be acting like this. So in reality, the best person for Carson Hocevar to hit is Ricky. It's kind of like writing that personal letter to yourself. And I think that if anybody really understands what Carson is going through right now with a fast race car, a lot of talent, and just something between here and there that's not right, they can't get right because it's between here and here. It's between this left here and this right here. Huh?
It's a mindset.
It is. It's something going on right here. And Ricky, above all, we literally call him Ricky Stenhouse.
Ricky Wreckhouse is what I've heard. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black.
Yep.
But as I said,
I
if
agree.
anybody can help teach Carson a lesson on driver etiquette, on not being the caution, I think it would be Ricky. And I think in some kind of
Yeah, I
weird
agree.
way, Ricky's actually putting Carson under his wing. That it's actually the best scenario for Carson to further this rivalry. If you hear Carson's comments to Ricky when Ricky's got his face in we've got to understand here, Carson is a young kid. He's got a helmet on. He's not trying to talk back to Ricky in any way other than yes sir, you are my teacher, sir. He wasn't being combative.
No, because he
How,
knew he made the mistake.
how do you go whoop somebody like that? You can't.
Yeah, you
So
can't.
Ricky, it's going to play into Ricky's wheelhouse, and he'll be able to challenge Carson. And
Yes.
Carson will race other people more aware because Ricky probably is the best person that he could have wrecked into. And I'll say it again. I know I've said it 3 or 4 times, but when you look at the career, does Carson want to
Exactly.
become a Ricky Stenhouse? No. He wants to become a superstar.
He does.
Ricky is in the car that he's in because he couldn't stop tearing up equipment. Ricky is a heck of a race car driver. He is the best race car driver that's ever come out of the state of Mississippi. And that's Lake Speed is only the other one, right?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
mean he did it. He raced as a kid. He raced up in North Mississippi with the best of the best sprint car drivers, Terry Gray, Slammin' Sammy, all those guys that we Steve Kinser, all those guys that we are our idols on the dirt track side, and got the opportunity because Tony Stewart recognized that the kid had a lot of talent. And
Yes.
unfortunately, with the experiences that Ricky's had over his lifetime and his career, I mean, dated one of the hottest NASCAR drivers ever, Danica Patrick. He's had a heck of a career. But the one thing he doesn't have now is a competitive race car on a
Yes.
weekly basis. And Carson
Yes.
Hocevar is knocking on the door to have those kind of opportunities because he's raising eyebrows. But I don't want to think that just because he come back on X and said, look, I probably misread what Mexico City was. When you have sponsors and you have a sanctioning body that you represent,
Yeah.
you probably don't need to sit there and say the types of things that we can say here on the radio. Now, unfortunately, what that means is we're once again muffling a driver. We're taking away his personality, his clear thoughts. Once again, we have another iRacing incident, I guess, he was on a simulator when on Twitch while he was, discussing his thoughts of Mexico City at the time.
Oh,
Do
that's
they
what it
not?
was.
Do they not kind of coincide with what I said and what I absolutely believe? And without a doubt, I listened to Kyle Larson say, "Look, it was pretty cool because I wasn't expecting to actually meet some friends and people that." It gave me the opportunity to talk to other drivers instead of being up in my motor coach. Okay, that's good, but let's really listen to what Kyle Larson was saying because Kyle Larson is a seasoned a driver on the etiquette of not ruining his career by opening his
Right.
big mouth, right? I mean, he
Right.
took the ultimate.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he. I mean, what he did was wow. So to be able to come back from that, he's very, very careful on how he represents the sport from that
But
point on. So
but there
at
was
least Carson didn't
learning
have
that
to
took
pay
place
that
there too.
price. But I do believe that probably his comments later on were more protection of his image and his sponsors. And NASCAR probably was not too happy with a driver coming out with those types of
Oh, I'm sure.
opinions with where they were racing at. Because contrary
Yeah.
to belief, NASCAR puts a whole lot of money into bringing these races to those types of places. Chicago road course is not a cheap deal. That's not
No,
that's
it is
not
not.
a no. It takes a lot of money to do something like that, and it took a lot of money to send all these haulers and to have that racetrack and to give up a date for somewhere else that would have been more profitable than possibly Mexico City. That's the one thing I think we missed in all of this. You're basically taking a racetrack that you already built, that you own, that it's already paid for, hopefully, right? And now you're paying these fees to go rent another track in another country and all the logistics that goes along with that. That's a very expensive adventure.
There is a
And
goal in mind, though.
of course, and it's fan growth, and that's something that we all agree on. So if
Yes.
that's what it takes when we're in Mexico then I'm all for that. But no, I think I put engineers control the race these days. And to hear SVG kind of fight back from that, I think that's yeah. But you had a perfect connection. You were like, Carson or Ty, you're not there yet. You can't make those decisions. You are still being told what to do. SVG, though you are new to the Cup Series, who else have we seen go to these racetracks at road courses and put the killing on that he has two
Yes.
times? Like this
Yes.
is the second killing. Like this is the second massacre that SVG has done to the Cup drivers, and they all got to be walking away licking their wounds that they got their butt tore up by a guy who drove sports cars and Trans Ams, right? So engineers control a lot of the sport, and unfortunately, it's controlling all motorsports these days. Engineers have a big hand when you're seeing dirt late model cars built like old Cup cars where they had a lot of skew in them and the whole right side of the
Mhm.
body is completely manipulated for aero advantage. Look, I had an old guy tell me when I first got in dirt track business, yeah, they're not worried about aero, but the real ones are. So, that's an engineer, right? That's
Yep.
somebody
Yep.
who's trying to get every ounce out of the race car that they can get. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily go with the driver's preference. So to have SVG say, hey, I'm going to lay it out on the line because this is how I race and I'm afraid I'll screw up. I'm the same way. If you put some kind of restriction on how I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to do, I'm probably going to screw it up because I just have that tendency to do that. So for him to be aware of his own self and say, look, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to race this race car. I'm not looking in my rear view mirror. I'm driving this car the way that I'm comfortable driving it. It finally gave the engineers a chance to just turn the mic off and probably talk amongst each other. They have a real driver behind the wheel. Now, look, next week when we go to Pocono, I want
It's a
him to
different
listen to his
story.
engineers. Yes, I
Yes.
want him to. I want him to listen to the team. But go
Yeah.
do what you
That's
do
a
right now
that's a
because
different
that's what you're
story
really
there.
good at. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, I think you bring up some good points with regard to. I think we're in agreement. I think I like the way you put it. Ricky Stenhouse was the perfect person for Carson Hocevar to run into because Ricky Stenhouse did exactly the same thing. Like I say, we used to call him Ricky Wreckhouse because he was constantly wrecking other drivers on the track, and it was like, oh, there goes Ricky again, and Ricky. There were a lot of jokes around it because he was constantly wrecking. So he knows that, but he also is competitive, and he does not want Carson Hocevar to be in his way of trying to get into the playoffs if he has any chance of getting there. But you're right. I thought as a missed opportunity for him to be a coach and a mentor, and I still think it's that. It's just a different way of saying the same thing, though. Ricky Stenhouse is the perfect person to make that point. And Carson Hocevar is just young enough that he almost needs someone who's going to be in his face. Like when you go into the military, you got to get their attention and you got to be in their face. And that's what he was doing. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was in his face when he got inside his vehicle and in his space to say, listen, this has got to stop. He didn't say that, but that's in essence what he's saying. So I think he's got Carson Hocevar's attention. I think that these guys are going to have a beer together and really get this straightened out so that they can move on and continue through that learning curve. But Ricky is the right guy to do it. So I think we're in a total agreement there. And at some point, we're not going to be talking about Ricky Stenhouse and Carson Hocevar. At some point, we might see them being the best of friends.
Yeah, let's remember that Ricky was not nurtured at Roush Fenway. He had teammates like Carl Edwards who literally wrecked into the back of him and sent him to a win. I believe at St. Louis. It was the craziest finish I think we've ever seen. Yeah, where he blew up. Ricky blew up and Carl didn't know or whatever, just ran into the back of him. Carl only admits now that he wasn't the greatest teammate. And, the Matt Kenseth, we've seen bits and pieces of that throughout Carl's career, that he wasn't very sociable. So the guy had a lot of talent, but he was focused as the number one, just as Matt Kenseth was. And I think that was kind of the deal. Yeah, that was kind of the deal that you got at Roush Fenway at that time, that you had independent drivers. Jamie McMurray didn't last very long there. He never felt in with Roush. He never felt in with those guys because honestly, he was probably in a room with a lot of me's. And that's racing, entirety. But he felt more at home with Chip Ganassi than he did over at Roush Fenway because of the type of atmosphere that Jack Roush created there. He wanted separate race teams. He didn't want teams. He didn't want a team adventure. He wanted separate race teams. And that's how they did. And so, by no means was Ricky nurtured or put under the wing of anybody there at Roush Fenway. It was kind of, this is the performance that we expect from you. And if you're not going to give that type of performance, then you'll just become another name on the has-been list. And Ricky made it all the way to Cup. So he was good. Just unfortunately, we never got to see him prosper, as we're keeping our fingers crossed that we get to see that from Carson Hocevar. We want our sport needs superstars.
Yes.
We don't have a Jeff Gordon or a Dale Earnhardt Jr. right now carrying the sport. And I'm just not, as many cheers as we get with Chase Elliott, he's maybe the fan favorite, but expectations aren't the same. The entire time that Dale Jr. was not winning, we Dale Jr. fans, and very rarely, Miss Sharon, will you ever hear me consider myself a race fan towards a driver, because I feel like there's a thin line when you're doing these types of media things with that. I was a die-hard fan of Dale Jr. And I would argue in any public place to defend my driver when he was going through the worst of times. Chase Elliott's lack of performance at the racetrack isn't discussed very much. It's almost like there is no, well, Chase Elliott just relies on his daddy's name like we did, like we heard as Dale Jr. fans. Like, that's just not, it's not the same. Yeah, he's NASCAR's most popular driver, but he doesn't get the same ridicule for running, as the third best driver at Hendrick than what Dale Jr. was as the third best driver at Hendrick. It was expectations for Jr. The fan base is just happy that Chase shows up every week. And so there's definitely a big difference there, which means the lack of star power, the real lack of stardom that sports needs. Sports needs fanatics. We all call ourselves fans, but sports needs fanatics to grow. And they need that one villain versus that one superstar that elevates the sport. Basketball is at its best when Steph Curry is playing LeBron James. That's when it's the best, because those are two named people. Our sport was at its highest when Dale Earnhardt was fighting Jeff Gordon, right, for the wins. And we don't have that right now. Kyle Larson, I don't think, will ever carry the sport in the type of stardom and fashion that we need. But we can start at ground zero and we can build one of those characters. And I really think that somewhere amongst these drivers in the garage, we have a secret superstar that only in the next coming years are we going to say, wow, where did this kid come from? And it's not going to be your William Byron. It's not going to be your Kyle Larson. Those guys have already established their careers. This is going to come from somebody that, whether it be a Corey Haim, whether it be a Carson Hocevar, somebody is going to disrupt those championships we're already trying to give Kyle Larson and William Byron. So those are my thoughts with Carson. I do put him on a pedestal. His name has come up a lot. 3 years ago, I would have said, Chris, I would argue to the end if you were going to try to tell me Carson Hocevar had the chance to be a superstar in this sport. But between his personality, his humbleness that he has to the sport, his willing to learn, it all tells me that we are gearing up for a guy who can really take the sport a long way, because I buy in to a driver who's real. And if Carson was there and able to take a guy with his head in his face with a helmet on and still say, yes, sir, Carson wants to win more than anything. And he'll do it at all costs and figure it out along the way. And that's what he's doing right now. He's figuring it out along the way. Sorry about the long breath.
Oh, that's all right. I agree with you. I think that's going to happen. I can't think of any other comments that I had with regard to this, but I do think at some point we're going to see Hocevar and Stenhouse maybe be good pals, drinking beer together. So we'll see if that comes to pass. But let me look at some of the other hot topics here. Let's see. Oh, the in-season challenge seating. We've got 2 races in now on that in-season challenge. And I meant to, let me see if I can get that real quick, get the new image file for the race after.
Yeah, I believe I shared it to the
Yeah,
group.
you did. And I'm going to bring it up here. Yeah, right here.
I don't mean to talk about something that our fans don't know about, but we have instituted a new group so that we can discuss things before coming on air. And I really feel like that gives us a big advantage as we continue to kind of fill out each other's personalities and how we handle each of these discussions. So really excited about that. I will admit, Miss Sharon, I do turn off my notifications generally. So I don't get mad if I'm late to respond, and if you decided to turn your notifications off as well because it can ding a lot, I don't blame you either. But yeah, so let's pull up this image right here that you've got. This of course is not the true seating just yet. This is just speculative. It's where we are right now with
It's where we are right now.
Yes,
Now here's the thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're great. No, because I mean, it really, first of all, I predicted this a couple of weeks ago with the challenge that how it was going to mess up everybody's bracket without SVG. Well, here we are. Another prediction by Creighton. He's bad tail when it comes to this. But we're just going to have to forget the fact that SVG is not on this not on this challenge docket.
Yes, and Jay and I talked about that scenario. We talked about the possibility of one of the 4 drivers that did not make it into the top 32 for the in-season challenge could come up with a win, and that's exactly what happened this week. SVG was not one of the 32 qualifiers. I think Brad Keselowski beat him out by 21 points. So what you see over on this side are all of the drivers, okay? They were listed by car number, but they've kind of changed that listing now. So you'll see that it kind of mirrors more of this listing, which is the current seating. So what they did is they look at the finishes of the drivers at Michigan, and they looked at the finishes of the drivers at Mexico City. And I'll give you some examples here. Hamlin was first in Michigan, didn't race at Mexico City. He still has a top seed because someone below the cut line won this week. So there is no number 1 this week. There's only a number 2. So the person who finished second, there were some ties. I should have brought my other graphic because there are some ties here. So what they did is they look at, let me see if I can get some examples. Let me show you another graphic. Okay.
Well, it is funny how we walk right into this mess with Hamlin not showing up to Mexico City and Shane, why do I keep trying to call him Steve? Shane Van Gisbergen winning the race. I mean, that, it's like Murphy's Law, right? If it can happen, it will happen. And it did happen. And now here we are.
It did happen, yes. Let me see if I have that here because the in-season challenge. Okay, let me go back here. That's not it.
But look at Busher right there, seated second. Talk about
Seated second. Yeah. Look at how he moved himself up. What was his finish in the first race?
second.
Second. So that what they'll do is they'll look at, let me go back to the stream here. They will look at Busher. His best finish between the two races is second, and that's why you see him in second place here. Okay. Bell had a best finish of second as well. But when you look at their second best finish, Busher had the 10th place finish, but Bell had the 16th place finish. That's why Bell is in third and not in second.
Right.
Same thing with third. Gibbs and Elliott both have a third place finish, but Gibbs has the 11th place over Elliott's 15th place, so that places Gibbs higher than Elliott. So when there's a tie, fourth place. I thought there were two drivers that were fourth place.
Well, it's still going to seat them. It is between Gibbs and Elliott.
Okay.
Gibbs has a third and 11th, and Elliott has a third.
Oh,
and 15th.
there you go. Yeah. Actually, the two fourth places were Wallace and Bowman. Okay. But Wallace has a 12th place finish compared to Bowman's 36th place finish.
Right.
So that places him higher than Bowman. And so it goes. That's how they do this seating. Now, when we fill this in with the Pocono race, they're going to do the same thing. And they're going to look at the best finish of the three races. But let's take example for Busher. If Busher comes up with a first place finish at Pocono, he's still going to be in that second place spot because nobody else will have that first place finish other than Hamlin. So what they would look at is who has the best second place finish. Is it Hamlin or is it Busher? And they'll look at Hamlin's finish at Pocono compared to, Busher's second place finish. So that's how it's going to go. And then after they look at all of that is when you're going to get the other image file that I'm going to put up next, and that's the bracket. Now, let me just tell you, I was reading on NASCAR's site today, they're going to do a fan challenge bracket. So fans will be able to fill in their brackets just like you do for basketball, and you're going to have a chance. And I think they're going to pay bonus points if you have somebody who's not expected to win who wins. A surprise win. So the next 5 races after Pocono will all be televised on TNT. And those races will be lined up on each side. Those 32 drivers will be lined up in these yellow spots, and they will be seated against, in this case, it's the first place driver against the 32nd place driver. Then you got the second place driver against the 31st place driver. And each corner is going to be listed like that. So all you have to do is beat the driver that you are seated against. And if you beat your driver, then you're going to move on to that next round. And so the first round is going to be I'm having a hard time reading this. The first round is going to be, I know the Chicago street races in there. Oh, it's going to be at EchoPark Speedway at Atlanta. Then the next round is going to be at the Chicago street race. Then we're going to go to Sonoma. And that will be a street course race. Okay, here, I can see it here now. Sonoma, and then it's going to be Dover. And then the championships round is going to be at Indianapolis. So this is EchoPark. This round is going to be the Chicago street race. This round is going to be Sonoma Raceway. This round is going to be Dover. And this round, the championship round, is going to be at a crown jewel track of NASCAR, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And that's where the champion is going to be determined. And it's going to be a head-to-head with the last 2 drivers standing. So I think it's fantastic. And you can see here where number 1 seed is lined up with number 32 seed. Number 2 seed is with 31. Number 3 seed is with 30. And the number 4 seed is going to race number 29 seed. And so all they have to do is beat the driver they're seated against. And it's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be fantastic. Wow.
Well, we have two races in this that are going to be in an SVG wheelhouse, and I think that that's unfortunate because
yes.
we will not be able to see SVG take a in-season championship, which I think he could be very well seeded or very well predicted on the gambling side as one that could, very well win it all. So we're not going to be able to see that, and that's unfortunate.
Well,
to get over that, I have to get over that. And
SVG is not going to be in that in-season challenge. You're right.
At all. And so that's that. You got a guy who can literally come in and win these races. And then what it might have been if he would have just made it in and then made it to Indianapolis, we could very well have us, a guy who,
but it goes back to
that kind of exposure.
It goes back to the play. It goes off to the playoffs as well. We always talk about drivers who won the championship because of a tie, because of 1 point that made the difference. In this case, it was 21 points. And I read a stat recently about Ryan Blaney, and he has a very high percentage of his current points are actually points that he's earned through stage points.
Right.
Not stage wins, but just being in the top 10 for those stage points. And so that has put him in a very good position in the point standings. So that's a lesson learned. Because if we do this in-season challenge again, and these drivers want to be in, I think it caught a lot of people by surprise this time. I don't think they really understood it. And I don't think NASCAR really promoted it very much for these drivers to know that they were in this in-season challenge to be in the top 32. But they know it now for next year's in-season challenge. So I think there is going to be a learning curve. And I'm sorry, I did interrupt you. So go ahead and finish your thought.
No, I completely agree with all that you're saying. As I'm looking, I'm looking at Blaney and seeing where he's seated. Of course, that could be definitely a sleeper coming up into this. Bubba Wallace has done a great job this year at getting stage points as well. All this is going to really mean, stage finishes is a big component to where and how many points you collect out of these races. But I don't necessarily think it has, any real reference to how these bracket challenges are going to happen, which, that comes a whole nother strategy. And I believe I asked it before, do you focus on the strategy for a regular season championship, or do you focus on its challenge for a mid-season tournament? And so I think that there's going to be different paths that these drivers take. If I'm a Blaney, I'm just going to worry about going out and trying to win races. That's where Blaney needs to be right now. Yep. He needs to get a season together so that he can go for that late run. Blaney kind of reminds me a lot of Tony Stewart. He doesn't get going until about mid-season there, but once you hit the mid-season mark, most of the time.
But look at Blaney Larson. Really Larson's ranked number 2 in the series point standings. He had a 5th place in Michigan, but look at his finish at Mexico City, at a 36th place finish at Mexico City. So I think we're going to see some surprises here. Zane Smith, a 7th place finish at Michigan, but a 35th place finish. But he's going to be seated up toward this. Let's see, Smith is seated in a 13th place spot, which is higher than he would have been seated. So I think we're going to see some surprises, just like you see in the basketball bracket. Sometimes you see the 32nd seeded team come in and knock out that number 1 seeded team. And you might see that happen in this bracket, and you might see some surprises in who those championship competitors are going to be.
Absolutely. But, the one difference is that is based on a full season. This is only based off of a 3-race stretch on where they're going to be seeded come championship.
Wait a second. It was based on the previous races before Nashville, or actually it was based on the Nashville race and where you were seated in the point standings after Nashville. So all of the races, Nashville and before, were what created the seating for the 32 drivers who
Yeah,
participated.
this is more like a play-in tournament going on for the next 3 races.
Yes.
A play-in to where
With 5 races.
you can have some losses here, but once you get to the bracket, you're not gonna go to the next step if you
Unless
have
you pick your
an engine
guy.
failure, a wreck, or anything into that scenario.
Yes.
Unless something crazy happens, of course. But I do expect to see upsets. This is so wide open right now. There is
It
no
is.
way that we can even begin to strategize what's going to happen without the next step. And I think that that's kind of fun because that gives us a week by week content maker where on most of the time when we're talking about racing, if we have to, take the full picture there. Right
Yes.
now, we've got about 6 weeks where we're going to really just be able to rely on what content is being created out of each of those races. And I think that there's going to be a small portion of the race fans that are really going to dig into this. And
I'm loving it so far.
these small portion race fans, I'm not going to go off and say it's going to be a big success for everybody. But
Yes.
what it does do is it gets us gamblers, us parlay people. It gets those sports fanatics that love sports all around. I mean, how many times have you heard me refer to a basketball or an NFL or something to that? So, in other words, I have a big, broad band perspective of different opinions from all sports, and I think that that's the wheelhouse that this really covers. This gives somebody's going to be searching the internet saying, I want to know more about this bracket challenge, and I'm going to listen to. So that gives us an opportunity, right, to really emphasize that we are talking about this bracket. We do want to be able to get our picks in the mix, so to speak. And, look, it's probably not going to be a Kyle
My bracket.
Yeah. So
I
going to
showed it to you upside down, but I got my bracket.
Pocono is a heck of a place to have this resolved, right?
Yes,
The
the
seating,
tricky
because it's not.
triangle.
Yes, the tricky triangle. It almost plays into perfect
Yes, it
for
does.
building this up because typically guys that you have run well at Pocono are gonna run well where else? Where
At
else? At Indianapolis.
at Indianapolis, you're right.
Pocono's kind of
Because
a test track for
yes,
what we're going to see at Indianapolis. So
yes,
the last seeded race is actually going to be a sister track, so to speak, sister track of the last race of this in-house in-season tournament.
that's a good
So
point. I'm
the
glad you
names
pointed
are
that
not going to
out.
be there yet, but the excitement is definitely building. You've got a guy like Michael McDowell who can back up maybe a strong finish at Pocono and get him seated somewhere. I do believe with it going from 1 to 32, that means the 16th and I guess 17th are going to be
Matched
tied
up.
together. Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
somebody who's maybe had a so-so run in the middle of the middle of the seating may not have as much of an advantage as somebody who maybe like a Ryan Blaney got a slow start and won't necessarily be paired with one of the top name drivers. But
Right
what
now,
will be
that's
cool is if we do have a Ryan Blaney squaring off with say a Chastain or a Busher or something to that, because we want to see these high risk elimination factors as
yes.
we crown our first ever in-season champion,
Well, right
in-season
now it would
tournament
be
champion.
Hamlin. It would be Hamlin against Hocevar. Can you imagine that?
And Hocevar very well could go to Pocono and take a checkered flag.
You never
Think about
know.
how many first-time
He could
winners
be a
we've
number
actually
one
seen.
seed.
Yeah,
Yep.
at Pocono, we've seen a lot of first-time winners at Pocono Raceway. So that could be something. I think Ryan Blaney, as a matter of fact, got his very first career win at Pocono in the Wood Brothers cars. So
Okay.
yeah, so
So another one that is interesting is you've got the series points leader Byron in 16th. He would be going head to head with Brad Keselowski. So the number one in points going against somebody who has struggled all season long, but is starting to come around.
right.
And where Byron's been trending upward, could be going into a downward slide during this point of the season. So
which builds the anticipation, which builds the creativity. I'm not sure, how quickly I'll get my bracket filled out. I promise you, I will probably have multiple brackets as I do in college basketball. So if I try to sell you one, there's probably 100 more that I lost at. And really, I don't know. Is there a fan challenge behind this bracket?
There's going to be a fan challenge. I was reading about it earlier. And let's see. It says, coming soon, the bracket challenge. This NASCAR fantasy game puts you in control. Here, let me put this up on the screen. Because it is at NASCAR.com. Share screen. Okay, and I want to, here's the official site. I want to share this. Okay, coming soon is the bracket challenge. I'm going to make this big again so I can see it. This NASCAR fantasy game puts you in control of projecting the winners in each round. You predict the winner of each matchup, get bonus points for upset picks. I love that. Track your bracket throughout the in-season challenge. Win prizes, including the grand prize for a perfect bracket. And guess what the grand prize is, Chris?
What?
$1 million.
Wow.
Just like the winner of the in-season challenge for drivers. You can also win $1 million.
Now that is pretty cool.
Yes. So it is coming soon. And so watch for that bracket so that you can fill out your bracket for the in-season challenge that's going to start at the Atlanta track, EchoPark Speedway. So
yeah, that's cool. That's on the lines of what basketball does. Whether or not there's actually somebody that'll survive the bracket challenge, it's like you have a better chance of winning the lottery, I think, than you do a bracket challenge.
Well, if you do 100 brackets like you're talking about, you increase your chances, I suppose.
Yeah, that's why rich people win the lottery.
About a million different scenarios that it could be.
Yeah, rich people win the lottery because they can play it a lot.
Yes, there you go. So that was a good one. I'm looking forward to the in-season challenge. And I know Jay is super excited about this as well.
Yep. So my only notes on this is we walked ourselves into a mess by basically just missing the grade on the seeding side without having SVG, who's now a winner. It's sad that we're not going to get to see his. Yeah, so we kind of covered that, but it's disappointing. I don't think there's anybody else on that list that we could have said, hey, they could make a big difference if they were seated in this event. But that's just where we are. And unfortunately, we'll get to see him probably win a couple more races, which will add, I think the number of races needed to win right now to take the very top spot is 3 races, correct? In that, so you could basically have SVG rolling in and getting 3 wins and putting himself at the top. Yeah, at the top of the championship board.
Here's the other thing: he would be the number 1 seed, I think, because Denny Hamlin doesn't have a second place finish yet. We wouldn't know until Pocono what Denny Hamlin's second place finish would be. Let me just say this.
That's kind of weird how that seating does lay out, because you're basically benefiting a driver for not participating. And I'm not sure that NASCAR was prepared for that one, but we didn't even discuss the Denny Hamlin not going to Mexico City, and kind of the implications that could have on the race team. Obviously,
well, it wouldn't have had an impact in this particular case because SVG is not in the points, so there is not a second person with a number 1 position right now.
I just don't know how it did not start. I just don't understand, Miss Sharon, how it did not start. Can keep him at the top of the seed when he didn't even play at all.
Yeah,
That
I
without,
understand.
without ever bringing up SVG again, the fact of it is we have a driver who's at the top of the standings that did not compete,
Yes.
and he's carrying the number one seed because he didn't show up to a race, and that's kind of benefiting somebody who,
Well,
didn't
let's
and
play
had
what
this been
if.
Kyle Larson for crying out loud, not showing up to Charlotte last year, the whole world would be upside down. So, yeah, it's kind of weird
Let's
how
play
Denny
a
kind
what
of.
if though. What if Carson Hocevar, who is the number 32 seed right now, that would be seeded against Denny Hamlin? What if Denny Hamlin blows his engine and finishes dead last, and Hocevar wins that bracket and moves on? It wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
It wouldn't
yeah, that would
matter
be
that he
awesome.
missed
That
one
would be
race.
really awesome.
It could happen.
It
It could
could.
happen.
It could,
So
because now we're really only going to have two number one seeds, because we may or may not next week have a new winner. But what would be even crazier is if Denny Hamlin showed up and beat your favorite driver again. And then all of a sudden he has two wins and no losses, versus the rest of the field. So I guess he would kind of be a lock in for the next race,
well, I
which is
think it's
where,
going to
what's the
be
first race of the tournament? You said Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Okay.
I think it could be interesting too if another driver from that didn't qualify. Cole Custer had a really good race at Mexico City. What if he ends up winning at Sonoma?
Yeah, these
I
guys,
mean,
that they're the ones that are going to be paying a lot of attention to the in race tournament.
yes,
Those guys that
there are a lot of quirky little scenarios that could happen here.
definitely.
Okay. Um, let's go ahead and move on now to another hot topic. Let me go back to the thing here. Let's see. Stenhouse in-season challenge. Okay, the challenge starts at EchoPark. Travel issues getting to Mexico City. I don't think anybody anticipated that, but I thought NASCAR did a really good job of dealing with it. They did make adjustments. They saw what was happening. They made the adjustments to the schedule, and everything went on in spite of it. What are your thoughts?
It's one of those deals where it seemed like this weekend was a lot of Murphy's Law. What could go wrong did go wrong.
It is
Um,
true.
I guess you live and learn. I think Dale Jr. had a chartered flight that there was. I mean, look, Dale Jr. and airplanes scare me. So the fact that he literally made a tweet that said, "Hey, our plane was not going to make it because of some issues," it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like Dale, do you
That's
realize how
scary.
close? Yeah, how close you
Yeah,
could have been again.
yeah.
I don't think you'll survive another one, man. I mean, I don't know.
That's
Only
scary.
Jack Roush can survive three plane crashes. I'm not sure if there's any other race car driver.
Well, I think there was divine intervention there, but that's just me.
It was. It really
Yeah,
was. It really was. Dale Jr. is blessed, and he's one of those humble cats that realizes that.
yes,
That's what makes Dale Jr. so great for our sport. He is a humbled human being.
yes. I
He
love it.
doesn't he doesn't walk around like he's worth over a quarter of $1 billion.
I
So
agree.
overall thoughts with the travel issues getting to Mexico City. I think it wasn't just the plane issues. I think that they had some other issues as well coming into Mexico. A lot of the some sponsorships and stuff had to be covered up beforehand, because they're not as lenient with the gambling or
Oh,
the marijuana or hemp products or
mm-hmm.
whatever they are. The 3 Chi and stuff that was on Kyle Busch's car. So all of those kind of fall into place with the travel hiccups. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of guys who were ready to get out of there just about as quick as they were as they were getting there.
Well, I saw a
Um,
lot of conversation about the Montezuma flu.
yeah, that it is very weird. You mentioned traveling overseas and all, or traveling abroad. You didn't speculate where. or give us an insight of where you've been. But it is very strange that from like the beginning of my childhood, we had my aunt was married to a man that his parents were from Mexico, and he grew up in California. So one of the first things that I know about Mexico is you don't drink the water there. Like, so I'm not sure why it is that people. I want to know what the real bug is, because obviously there's some kind of transition in the food, and it's something that maybe I don't know. Maybe this is why we should have fluoride in our water. I don't know. There's something that causes the body to reject whatever it is that it's not just by happen chance that 3 or 4 people had the stomach flu in Mexico City. It's
Right.
got to be something with their culture, with their food. Something is the reason. I haven't ever heard these reports from Thailand or from any other. Have
Oh, it
you? I
happens.
mean, so you've heard this often, right? You've traveled abroad. You have a better of opinion of this. Mexico is like our next door neighbor. Uh, but as I said, as a young child, I always heard, "Don't drink the water if you go to Mexico." Tell me about what it is that creates these stomach issues. Have you experienced stomach issues from going abroad and traveling to different places? And what
Well,
do you think caused that?
I would say that, there's different cultures have different spices that they use. They have different um, sanitation regulations. Uh, you know, I think the water is different in Mexico versus the water that we have here. Um, and our bodies become accustomed to what we do every day. Now, when I traveled, we had a lot of precautions. There was the precautionary list, we were given, uh, I've been to Japan, I've been to Switzerland, I've been to France, I've been to Mexico, I've been to the Bahamas, um, I've been to Canada. That usually they tell you, like when we went to Japan, we were given a little readout that said, my hotel is this hotel at this address, that we could hand to a taxi cab driver so that they would know where we want to go, because we obviously were not able to speak Japanese to tell them where we were going. But one thing that I found kind of interesting is that in other countries, they make more of an effort to learn English. And so in other countries, they'll have things listed in, like in Switzerland, they have the French side, the German side, and I can't think of the other side, French, German. They're surrounded by 3 different sides. But anyway, they have things listed in all these different languages. We have things listed in one language. They have things listed in English so that you can kind of navigate your way around. In Japan, they told us don't go into the bathrooms. If you want to go to the bathroom, let us know and we'll take you to an American bathroom, because the way they handle that is very different than the way we handle it here. So you get these little warnings that tell you and kind of steer you in the right direction. I remember we were in Japan, and if we had a meal in front of us, if we talked to someone next to us, we might come back and our plate was gone, because from Japanese culture, they think that we're done eating. And so they remove the plate, and they're very efficient about that. Well, we weren't done eating. We were just talking to somebody for a minute. Same thing with the desserts. We went in, there were little petit fours. We took 2 or 3 of the little petit four desserts and put them on our plate. And the next day, they made an announcement to tell us one dessert. You can't take 4 or 5 of those. One, we only have enough for one. They ran out because people were taking so many because we're Americans and that's what we do. So there are little things like that that happen that are so different in other countries. And it makes you realize, it gives you a different perspective of who we are as Americans. And but as far as the flu bug or the Montezuma's Revenge, there are differences in different countries. Beef, you don't get beef in Japan, and if you do, you have to pay a really hefty price for beef. And so the beef that you get in Japan is not going to be as healthy as the beef that you get here for that reason. So there's different things that you're warned about ahead of time to be careful about. And I think that's the main thing. You got to make sure you pay attention when you get those warnings and don't just disregard it because they're giving you those warnings for a reason.
So was there any specific territory that you went to that developed the stomach bug while you were abroad?
I think for me, it was more of a jet lag kind of thing. And that's part of it too. If you're on jet lag and your resistance is lower, you're just more likely to pick up something too. Japanese people wear masks a lot of times. And when you're traveling, that's probably not a bad idea to wear a mask if you're traveling overseas because you are coming in contact with different bugs that maybe you're not usually in contact with. And if you are on a jet lag situation, your resistance is going to be lower than what it would be if you had a full head of steam with a full night of rest. So those are all things that contribute to things like that.
You're actually talking to somebody who is very fearful of trips and stomach issues because I've had so many of them throughout my lifetime. I'm not a very good traveler. I get sick really easily, and I'm not sure if it's nerves or whatever it may be.
It might be.
I like to go ahead and get it over with. That way, I can enjoy the rest of the weekend. In those cases, most of the time, the onset comes on pretty early, which I think really is developed from nerves.
Some of that can be anxiety.
Yeah. Right. So, and without giving too much TMI, I would prefer to use the Japanese bathrooms versus American bathrooms. I believe.
Do you know the difference?
Yeah, I do, and I'm all for that. I'm really, even though I live in God's country, I'm not really. I think that the tradition of our secondary bathroom gig is probably not the sanitariest, the most sanitized way to do things. I definitely agree that they probably have that side figured out. Toilet paper is probably just not the best. Deferent in those situations. But hey, to each their own. I have threatened in my house that I will own one of those one day, and and I promise you, I'm waiting on a toilet to go out just so I can because.
Oh dear Lord.
Yeah, I mean, look, it sounds so much more inviting than the way that our traditional ways of handling that type of business. But I did hear that in China. There's basically just a hole in the floor for their.
Well, that's basically what it is in Japan too.
Right.
It's a hole in the middle of the floor, and it's community. You have women and men all in the same area.
Right.
So
and we have stayed at a campground this past weekend that had to have a code in order to go into each of the male or female restrooms because that is our society versus others. So yeah, it's it's definitely difference when you get out of the States. You see life in a different perspective, and you probably appreciate the American culture a lot more. But there are some things I think other countries have figured out. Back to the water issue, back to the travel issues that with the
we got way off.
Yeah, we did get way off. But it's very important because it does seem to be that Mexico has that issue with. And look, I tell people all the time, the Mexican the food that you get in Mexico is all.
Some of it's
once
yummy.
you understand their food, you understand what it's for, right?
Yes.
Like we have so much gluten and so much backed up, our systems are backed up. Very few cultures, and I may be wrong for saying this, is only speculatory, but there's only two types of cultures that I feel are heavy set and healthy, and that's the Italian culture and the Mexican culture. because those guys
No.
literally feed. They know how to treat the gut. They know what to do to stay healthy, and it's something, as Americans we've got to figure it out, because we definitely have a lot of gluttony around here, as you just admitted in Japan with the sweets. That's American. That's something we Americans
That's
do. We'll
American.
sit down and eat a whole thing of Oreos and be like,
Yes.
man, I can't believe I'm so darn fat.
Well,
Well,
and people have a different perspective of family and life and everything else over, in other countries.
right.
It is interesting. I took a class one time in my former workplace, and it was all about respecting other cultures and personalities. And they were talking about Germans are so they're perfectionists. They want everything to be exactly right. They read the instructions before they put together something, and they take it step by step. Americans, the photograph or the comic strip that they had for Americans is we're driving while we're eating a hamburger and taking notes.
Right. Right.
We're multitasking all the time and doing a lot of different things all the time. So
it's why our
and we
McDonald's
don't read instructions before we put it together. We try to just put it together according to what we think it should be, and then we wonder why it didn't work. And then we go and read the instructions. So, there are a lot of differences, and there's pros and cons all the way around. But I think it's great to learn about the different cultures. And when you talk about the food and the differences, did you ever watch the Blue Zones on Netflix?
No.
I loved it. It talked about, this guy took 20 years to study why certain blue zones around the globe had higher concentrations of centurions, people who lived to be 100 or older. And he studied what they were eating. Okinawa, the respect that they have for their elders is one of the things that contributed to them living longer. He said there were no nursing homes in those countries because people take in their elders and care for them. They're part of the family. They are highly respected. And there's no need for nursing homes in those countries, so they don't have them. They eat things like purple potatoes that have a high degree of nutrients that can help you to live longer. They eat more fish. There are different habits. They do more exercise. Italy, some of the places in Italy, women make their bread there. They're using their arms to make that bread on a daily basis. They're sweeping the floor. And different things, daily activities that give you more exercise throughout the day. And Costa Rica, this guy was talking about when he came into the community, he told this guy, he says, I'm looking for this man that's over 100 years old. Do you know him? And he goes, it's me. And he's like, no way that this is you. He was riding a horse. He's over 100 years old. And they talked about the combination of foods that they put together in Costa Rica that help them to live longer. They're a poor country. They don't have a lot of different foods that they go to the market to get. They grow their food and they combine those foods together. And that combination of foods is what helped them to live longer. It's just amazing. And I know we are way off track, but I find those kind of things fascinating.
Right.
And I really enjoyed watching that. It's called the Blue Zones. And if you get a chance, I don't know if it's still on Netflix or not, but it was fascinating what this guy discovered of all these different places. But exercise was a factor. Socializing was a factor. I talked about respecting the elders. They were part of when they played games, they were part of the games that were played. They were part of a social group, a knitting group, a sewing group, a cooking group. They were very active in the community. And those kind of things are what help people to live longer. And they went to church every week. and they were part of the church community. There were several different factors that were involved. It wasn't just the food. It was being a part of their family, the socializing, having a purpose in their life. Maybe it wasn't a big job that they had to do. Maybe their job was just sweeping the floors every morning. Maybe their job was making the bread every day, but they had a job that contributed to the family dynamic. And again, it was just so fascinating to see. And in California, Yoma Linda, is that what they call that community? They have a lot of exercise. They have a lot of that going on there, where they've studied this and they've built the whole community around doing these things for aging adults. So again, it's just fascinating to me.
As a food delivery driver, the one thing that I've always noticed is other cultures' foods are a lot heavier. We can go and spend $20 at Chick-fil-A and our bag is not very heavy, but you go buy you $20 worth of some Chinese food or some Japanese food, and honey, you're gonna have to have a crane to carry that bag to the car.
Well,
It is very different. Anthony Bourdain, I think, really
yes,
dives deep into different cultures and food and stuff. And look, if this isn't comparing life to racing and vice versa, then I don't want to be here, because that's really it's so amazing how racing creates these different outlets to discuss things like this. Typically on a race show you wouldn't have the dive into different cultures and the food and stuff like that, but it relates to these guys, and there's a reason why they were some that were sick. And
yes.
you look at what Daniel Suarez did, coming all the way from the rear to the front. That's kind of like a Michael Jordan moment. But then you have a guy like SVG who admitted that it was coming out of both holes, and he had a. I mean, you didn't want the guy to not have that kind of experience, right? Because
Yes,
honestly, it's really crazy. A true athlete is at their best when they have something
that
wrong with them,
mental,
because they're
mental
mentally able
mindset.
to shut things out, and those are the best times when the greatest athletes of all, they persevere. And so SVG could have finished 16th if he didn't have a stomach bug, because he had instead of worrying about projectile in the car on both sides, he would have been thinking about how he was driving in a corner and messed it up. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
crazy how all that works together, and it is hearing your perspective from being overseas abroad, and how that first of all, the jet lagging. I never thought about how that has a direct influence with your immune system. The different types of bugs that you can run into that are not predominant. My son, it's crazy story real quick. We'll stay on the racing topic as much as we can, but my son, I think that we got COVID before anybody else back in February of 2020. It come through the schoolhouse. What my son had a kid in his classroom, and I believe he was in kindergarten or first grade at the time, and they went to China for Christmas, and
Oh
they
my
came
goodness.
back, and within the first week, the teacher was out of the class. There was a mysterious stomach bug flu that was going around the school,
Yep, yep.
that started right there in my son's classroom, and it made me really sick. I quit smoking cigarettes because of it, and I've
Wow.
never picked them up again afterwards. And so, that was an experience that I'll never forget, and to be that it may have been caused because somebody was in another country and brought it directly here. Those are the types of things your body's used to fighting. It has the immune system built to protect you from where you're from. You go into
Right.
other places, it's
You
that's what they
built
say,
up your
honey,
immune system to
take you
protect you. Yeah.
right. Don't buy shelf honey. Buy honey from your local dealer, because that honey is more for what your immune system is based off of. But
Mm-hmm.
let's get the guys there next time a week early. That way they can get all their stomach issues out of the way. If we're going to go to Mexico City, I think the one topic that we didn't hit on is this crazy tour where we're going from Michigan to Mexico City, now to Pocono. I think that's really hard on the drivers.
Yeah.
I see NBA players complain all the time, load management. That seems to be, the words that they use there. We are in the middle of a 28 race, uh, s- you know, every week, 28-week race schedule
Yes,
where it's
yes.
every weekend. This was a bad time to have this type of travel for these guys, and it's really gonna wear on them as we get closer
Yeah.
to the end of the regular season.
I will
Hopefully,
say this,
we'll
logistics is a very difficult thing to manage because there's so many different factors that go into it.
right.
But I'm sure NASCAR's listening to the drivers, and they will look at that and do whatever they can do.
Right, right.
Yeah.
One of the other takeaways was, I don't know if you noticed. Let's dive back into the very first topic of the night. What we thought about Mexico City before we go, because I don't really think. I think we covered most of the other topics there, right?
Let me
What
take a
about
look.
the when we noticed the grandstands and the grandstands that were not being used? Is that a success when you have empty grandstands like we did, like a whole section that wasn't being used? We seen the straight, where they go through the stadium, and that seemed to be
Yeah.
pretty well filled. But
I
not being
noticed
able
some
to.
other areas were well filled, but not all of the areas.
Right. And I heard some complaints that maybe the ticket prices were a little high based off of the culture that was. There were definitely American prices for a place that where their currency doesn't exactly meet ours. So I seen that they were really on the verge of being Formula One type prices. One of the biggest takeaways from that is we go to Talladega every year and we spend more money on firewood and water than what we ever do on the tickets to buy them. They're only $50. We get 2 races while we're
Hmm.
there. It's great. So that's an issue. I think of the lack of field stands was maybe that the prices were
Well,
a little bit higher. I'm not sure how you
let
felt
me
about that.
let me put some perspective on that. The announcers, I noticed, had said that facility can handle over 100,000 people. And I think about Bristol Motor Speedway. I know there was a day when they would pack people in there and completely fill that place, but we're in a different environment. People are watching their pennies a lot more closely today than they were then.
Mhm.
And having to make choices. They're not going to 5 or 6 races. They might be going to maybe 1 or 2 races. And so they have to pick and choose. It might be the ticket prices, but when I think about, if you go to North Wilkesboro, they can handle 30,000 people there. And we see that the stands are packed with 30,000 people. But you put those same 30,000 people inside a Bristol Motor Speedway and it looks empty. And you think, oh my God, how come they don't have people there? Well, it's the same 30,000 that you had at North Wilkesboro. That was a sold out crowd.
Right.
But you're in 1,000 seating capacity stadium. So I think that was the case here. This is something new. The first time that the Cup Series has come to the Autodrome, Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and number 9. I see that on your hat.
Oh yeah, I was looking down. Sorry. No,
I thought you were trying to tell me something. I was trying
no,
to
no, no,
figure
no,
out.
no, no, no. I was looking down to make sure I had cleared all my notes.
Oh, okay. So I think that it was a large capacity seating. They definitely had that stadium area packed in, and I would guess that alone was probably about 50,000 people. And I'm just guessing. I really don't know. So speculation. I'm speculating that maybe was 50,000. At the very minimum, it was 30,000 people, which was what we would have at a track like North Wilkesboro. But there were other sections throughout the track that I noticed they had large sections of people that were packed in there too. I think it was good planning on their part to specifically fill in the areas that they could fill in first and not have scattered seating throughout the entire facility, I guess you would say. So I do think that they did a good job of managing the seating and filling in the areas throughout the racetrack. And I love the big screen in that stadium area. And they had little picnic areas down there too, where people could picnic and be right up close and personal to the racetrack. So the only thing that worried me there, and I guess there were slower areas where you didn't have to worry about a race car coming into the picnic area there, but I do think that they did a good job of managing. I think there were probably more people there than people thought, and it wasn't a sold out crowd, but it's the first year that they've done it too. So there's always lessons learned in different ways of doing things. So I would anticipate as this grows, we might see more people in a second year there.
Yeah, new term, stadium section.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's unheard of by all of our vocabularies in NASCAR. Kind of turning the page here. I'm kind of the one asking the question now. Better fan result when you're out to try to get a new fan base, and that's exactly what NASCAR is doing by being at Mexico City.
I wanted to give you some stats on that.
What do you think that this is going to bring a better result than maybe the Coliseum race in California? It's kind of we're still bidding for that same type of geographic area, even in Mexico City. If I heard it so funny today, a famous comedian reminded us all, and this was not recently, that Mexico used to be California. And so there was a lot of Mexicans in California that just happened to become Americans because there was some lines drawn somewhere, and we forget that. So that's really a geographic that I think NASCAR is really trying to zone in on. And we saw the success, I would call it success, of the Coliseum. We saw diversity there. But this feels more like in the grand scheme of things, a true hit by going to the center of their culture, going to the mecca of their culture, and that's Mexico City. Do you think that this probably has a better result on creating a fan base versus the stunt that they pulled at the Coliseum?
Well, let me just tell you this. I read this stat today on social media as well. It came from Bob Pockris, somebody who I trust. He said the fan base in Mexico was 90% fans of those fans were from Mexico. 44% of the fans were from Mexico City, which is where the race took place. I thought that was fantastic for the first race. And I would anticipate as the word gets around and people talk about how much fun they had at the race, they got to see Daniel Suarez and so on and so on. They got to watch SVG. It had that international flavor to it, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
And I think as the word gets around, I think those numbers are going to change and maybe even get better in some respects. But I bet that next year you might have more Americans willing to make that trip to Mexico City. Might. I say that it's a big might because you don't know what the situation is going to be. But I think that there are some obstacles that are maybe preventing some Americans from making that trip right now. But next year, maybe that'll change. We'll have to wait and see.
That's a good point.
So yeah, I think that I think there's a lot of potential here.
I think kind of catching them with the Coliseum, and catching. I better watch how I phrase that. How we've brought that to the entertainment value, and then turned around and took it to the center of that type of fan base. I think that really does have a bigger significant value than what we give credit for. The one thing that I did notice, and I think it was talked about, was when they would do the fan shots, I was seeing a lot of Formula One stuff, a lot of Formula One jerseys and stuff. Hopefully, over the next couple of years, if we continue to go there, we will see that transition. They wanted to wear their race wear, and that's, I hate wearing a NASCAR shirt to the dirt track, and I don't really have that same guilt to wear a dirt track to the NASCAR track. I don't know why that works that way, but I think it's the way that you perceive. If you wear a NASCAR shirt to a dirt track, they're all like, okay, well, what is this guy? He must be. But if you wear a dirt track shirt to a NASCAR track, then oh yeah, you go to your local track and stuff.
You're a
So
big
it's kind of,
racer.
it works one way and not the
Yes.
other. So you need to
Yes.
wear your dirt track apparel when you go to the dirt track. But when you go to a NASCAR track, you definitely need to represent your home track, because that says that you're more than just a sit by the TV race fan. You're
Yes.
involved. You go
Yes.
and you support your local track. And I think that maybe that's what we've seen with the Formula One stuff. They support racing, and they wanted to wear what they typically
Yes.
wear to those types of events. So hopefully we can just get them in some Dale Jr. jerseys and maybe a couple of Suarez T-shirts, and we'll be able to watch that before our very eyes as they
Yes. Wouldn't that be great?
adapt to our type of culture racing.
Yes.
We went and we raced a road course there. Hopefully somebody's going to tune in that watched the race there at the road course, and they watch what Pocono brings, and then they're addicted as a true fan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I bookmarked some things here on social media, and I want to just kind of share this with everybody. Might be an unpopular opinion, but bringing the podium celebration to NASCAR road course races is pretty cool, and they should keep doing it. And they put up a picture of SVG and the other two drivers in first and second and third place up on the podium. I think that was Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell. So I think that was really cool. I do like the podium finish. What do you think about bringing that to other races?
So I heard Kyle Larson's remarks, and I'm with Kyle. I guess we just kind of scratch our head and we're like, well, we always pull the top three cars up in our big races at the dirt track. So
Yeah.
why don't we put more emphasis on a second and third place finish? But I believe NASCAR's really put an emphasis on the winner, and they've always done that. Second is Ricky Bobby. Second is the first loser,
The first
right?
loser. Yeah.
Right,
Yep.
right. So if you're not first, you're last. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
that's kind of the perspective that we have in NASCAR. We do four wide salutes on dirt track. We don't do those, but maybe once a year, I guess, in NASCAR. But so there's certain areas. Look, I'm not either for or against the podiums. I think there's maybe certain racetracks where that can hold true. Maybe a Daytona, any of these championship
I think
racetracks.
any of the crown jewels.
Maybe that's a way we divide the crown jewels from the others. I
Yeah.
like what you said there. Uh, great point.
Thank you. Okay, another thing that I saw, another stat that I saw, again from Bob Pockris, the 16.567 second margin of victory was the biggest since Texas in November of 2009, and the biggest on a road course since Riverside in 1979.
Which was the first year.
What?
That was, I believe, the very first year at Riverside.
Yeah.
The very
Isn't
first
that
road
crazy?
course race.
Yes.
Yeah. So Kurt
this is the
Busch was
first
the
year in Mexico
2009
City.
winner. Huh?
And this is the first year in Mexico City for the Cup Series.
Yeah, Kurt Busch's name come up in that 2009 Texas win, I believe it was. I don't know who the winner was of the inaugural event at Riverside, but I do know that I believe that was the very first year. That was the very first road course that NASCAR went to, and
Cool.
it was 1979. So, I'm kind of, I don't know if I've got any more opinions here tonight, Miss Sharon. What else you got on the board?
Well, let's see. Daniel Suarez said every single thing about this weekend exceeded my expectations. He was very happy with everything.
His bow to his people, his hand gesture to his people really showed that. Like he was appreciative. I heard many times over. I don't want this to go by too fast. I
Yes.
want to enjoy the moment.
Yes. I
And I
love
feel like
that.
that's something that we all find ourselves when we are doing something. You know, it's when you go and you go to a fun place, you know, in the back of your mind, this is going to be over as quick. I've spent 9 months planning this effort only for it to just go by so fast.
Yeah.
And
Be
then
in the moment.
yeah, you got to seize the moment. You got to slow things down. And Daniel Suarez did exactly that. You could tell that with his gestures after winning the race. Some people want to say that, you know, it was rigged or something to that effect. I
No,
don't
I
see
don't
how
think
that
so.
could be. It's just one of those wonderful moments where a competitor who had dreamed of just being a NASCAR driver got to win at his home track in a very important race series, though it's not the top race series.
And
It's the
think about
second
it.
top. I mean, it's, you know, it's second from the best, and he
Yeah,
was in the best equipment that he
think
could buy.
about it. He's raced that racetrack before in the Mexico series where he was a champion in
Right,
that
right,
series.
right.
He's raced, that's a track he's raced at before. How many of the drivers have raced at that track before?
Yeah, only a few. Denny
Only a
Hamlin
few,
was
and
one of
Daniel's
them.
one of them.
Yeah,
That's
Denny
right.
Hamlin was one. Kyle Busch was another. Kyle Busch didn't necessarily
Yeah,
have the finishes that
yeah,
he was looking
yeah.
for. So they were there in, I think, '06 and '07 was the last time I believe I seen where we were there in Mexico City.
Yes, yes,
So just think about the young talent that was coming into the series at that moment, and who was actually in that race. You know, that weren't superstars yet. What Denny Hamlin has done, and the wins, and the type of wins, the crown jewels that Denny Hamlin's won, just to think back that he was the first winner of Mexico City. At that time, we had no idea who Denny Hamlin was, who he was going to be. It's really cool how just names like that come back to you, and you realize, wow, you know, if I was sitting there and I remembered watching that race in 2006, I'd have probably been like, who is that guy with the funny teeth? You know, the Denny Hamlin guy. You know, who's ever heard of him? You know. And now, you know, he's not only one of the top 10 greatest drivers to ever win, but he's got 3 Daytona championships and
yes.
several other crown jewels to add to his belt. So, um,
Pretty exciting. The only other thing that we haven't talked about, and this was late news, it was not planned. It's a last minute decision. But Chase Elliott's going to be in the number 17 Xfinity Series race at Pocono.
hmm.
That was not planned. I'm not sure why they decided to do that, but they have decided to put him in that car.
Yeah, this kind of is this. He's in the 9 car. What car is he going to be in?
He's in the 17 for Hendrick Motorsports.
Oh, for Hendrick Motorsports. Okay, so that was probably a planned gig. I don't
No, it
think the
wasn't
17
planned.
is.
That's what they said. It was not planned.
So the car itself was not planned to be
I
there.
don't think so. No,
Okay. That's
not
probably a
according
sponsorship
to.
deal then. Could be. And it could be some emphasis of getting Chase Elliott some track time because it's not that he's that far off. He's you know, he's close. He finished 4th this past or 3rd this past weekend. So he's close. The team's good. A lot of times just getting these guys a little bit more track time. We've seen how well it worked for Larson to go win one race and then turn around and race the other. We watched it with Kyle Busch for years. This could be just a way to get Chase Elliott's confidence up and get him in a position to maybe win at a place like Pocono. So
Well, that's
I think the
possible.
crew chief's probably been really good here before, isn't it? Greg Ives, the
Greg
crew
Ives,
chief.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah, I
crew
think
chief there.
so.
So
He's
you
done
know,
real
there's a
well.
connection with him and Dale Jr. there as well. So so maybe Chase has got that got it in him this weekend, and we'll see him go back to back. But that's definitely a fast hot rod he's stepping into.
It sure is. Watch for more. We've got all the previews out right now. We also did an interview tonight with Joey Keneally. He made his debut in the ARCA West race out at Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway this weekend, Chris. And we did an interview with him. Sal and I did an interview with him to talk about that race. And I was kind of surprised with some of the comments that he made that were, to me, showing some maturity in him as a very young race car driver. So I hope you take some time to listen to that. I don't have it posted yet, but it will be posted tomorrow morning. I've got it edited. It's ready to go. It's just too late to put it out tonight, so I'm going to put it out tomorrow morning. Also, later on this week, let's go ahead and give them a heads up. Jay is on vacation. I did some of the reviews today by myself because Sal was very tired because of work travel that he had to do. So we may be working with someone new for the previews, with Joe being on, or Joe, what am I saying? With Jay being on vacation this week. We may have someone new. So just be prepared that there may be a new face for the previews this week for the races at Pocono. And I'm looking forward to that. If that doesn't work out, then I'll be doing previews by myself as well until Jay gets back next week. So at any rate, we've got a lot to look forward to. And I'm looking forward to those races up in Pocono. So what's happening at Why Not Motorsports Park this weekend?
Well, we got a weekly racing series this week, so it's not any big shows coming up for us, but we do have a big show coming up the 4th of July weekend, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We'll have practice on Thursday night, a full show for all of our classes, all of our weekly racing classes, except for our factory stocks, which is the main event. It's the Firecracker 50. We'll race qualifying and heat races for them on Friday, and then B mains and the full event, the main event, on Saturday. Both nights we'll run a full race program on Friday and Saturday night separately. So if you show up and race on Friday night, you'll be able to cash in on Saturday night as well. Just not in the factory stock series. But outside of that, you can find us at Flag of Caution on Twitter. You can find us at Chris Yellow Caution Flag Creighton on Facebook. You can find us at Flag of Caution on TikTok. And right here every Monday night with Fan4Racing, I've joined the group and brought now hopefully a friend and a longtime partner. I was really excited about getting you acquainted with a guy that really helped carry my show for a few years when it could have went away. I found an amazing talent and a guy who works well with others, and he's about as opinionated and crazy personality as I am, and I'm looking forward to his introduction.
Have you forewarned him about me?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we've had some talk. I told him about the mute button, so he was like, "You mean you got muted?" Yeah, I took a step back. So yeah, I've learned
speculation is our word now on Fan4Racing.
Yeah, you got to use the old speculation. But thank you, Ms. Sharon, for the opportunity, and I had a great time tonight.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I enjoyed it as well. And we're so glad to have you on board with us. It's so much more fun when you have that third person because two people tend to agree a lot. When you put in a third person, you get a disagreement and another point of view, and I like that. And so it's not that we don't mind the disagreements. We just still want to be respectful with one another, and I think we've done that. We depart as friends, even though we don't agree all of the time. And that's the main thing. So I do appreciate that. And I think it gives us an opportunity to teach others how to do that as well.
Yeah, that's the problem. We really in the world that we live in today, or the nation that we live in, we want to be against people who have different opinions than us. And I don't think that that's the way society thrives. We thrive by understanding that your perspective may be different than mine, but I want to listen to the reason why you carry the perspective, because when you explain your perspective, I learn something not only about you, but I also learn a little bit about the topic as well. Sometimes opinions can change because of these conversations. I have been sold on several things in my life because I met the right person who explained to me why they think the way that they think, and then I had to sit back and evaluate whether my opinion was actually worthy compared to the other person's opinion. And I'm one of those that will sit here and admit I can tell you where I was wrong. And I think that a lot of people have that issue. They always want to be right. And sometimes
Yes.
that's not necessarily a way to learn. Trust me, I'm a very opinionated person. You can ask my children. They see a bad guy sometimes because I really believe in some of the things that I feel are true. So if I think that I'm right, I will argue you to the end of the world and convince myself
Yeah,
that no
and
matter
that's when
what
my
you
mute
say,
button comes in handy.
yeah, that's where the mute button comes in handy.
Well, I'll tell you,
I'm gone.
it's okay. It's
Yeah,
okay
it's
to
okay. I
disagree.
don't get mad.
I don't get mad either. I think it's okay to disagree. Again, as long as we can respect one another. And I don't think you have to bash something to make your point. I think that's probably a weak point to go about it in a bashing kind of way. I want to hear the reason, not just bashing it to the ground because you just don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, like we don't probably talk about charters, though we will have probably a lot to talk about come Atlanta because there's probably going to be some major
What's
moves
happening there?
by then. Well, that's where the 2 week appeal process, and the
Yes.
panel right now has the decision to be made whether or not it will go to appeal, and if it doesn't, then NASCAR will be given the opportunity to do what they please, and that would be costly to 2311 and Front Row Motorsports if they lose their charters. But thank
Did
God we didn't
they,
have that conversation here tonight.
yeah, have they said if they're going to appeal?
Yes, they are going to appeal, but they're going to
Okay.
wait, and they're going to wait until the 2 weeks is up to try to give them
Gotcha.
as much time as possible because it will not come into effect until a week after the appeal is either
Yeah.
denied or the
3
appeal
weeks.
process goes through, which could extend it out even further as the appeal panel will have to come together. So they're just buying time, and like any other
Yeah.
judicial
Yeah.
system,
That's
they're
a
trying to,
strategy.
yeah, because there is a court date for December 1st, so we have until then to really resolve the problem.
Right.
As we've said before, it's best that these two parties get together and come to some kind of resolution. And I hope that right now they have the right people in place to get that resolution as quickly as possible before we may wind up in a situation where some teams really lose out. I don't want to lose these teams
I
in
agree. I
our
don't
circuit.
want to lose them. I
Right.
don't want to lose them, but there are consequences for some of the decisions that you make.
Absolutely.
And sometimes
Absolutely.
you don't look at the whole picture. So
Absolutely.
anyway, we will have more on that later.
Yeah, you tried to get me there. I'm going to be a good boy and keep my mouth shut.
We'll have more on that later. And
That's a teaser. Go ahead
yeah,
and shut her
teaser
off.
for our next hot topic sound off. There you go. So I do want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. We did get some interaction in our live chat today. I loved it. We were able to put some of those comments up on the screen and include those individuals. So we want to get more of that going on. So stay tuned for more. We'll be back on Monday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, right here on Fan4Racing Radio. So we'll see you for the previews.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.